Have you ever watched someone erase your place in the family with a single sentence? I have. My mother looked me straight in the eyes after my father's will was read and calmly said, "Your brother needs the inheritance more than you do." She expected me to argue, cry, or beg for fairness. I did none of those things. Instead, I quietly stood up, wished everyone well, and gave her something she never imagined would hurt more than any lawsuit ever could. I gave her my silence. My name is Grace, and growing up, my father was my best friend. While my older brother, Michael, chased one business idea after another across the country, I stayed close to home. Every Sunday morning, Dad and I drank coffee on the back porch before working together in his little woodworking shop. He taught me patience, honesty, and the value of keeping my word. When Dad became ill, everything changed. The doctors said his heart was failing, and he would need constant care. Without hesitation, I moved back into my childhood home. I drove him to appointments, cooked every meal, organized his medications, sat beside his hospital bed during long nights when sleep refused to come. Mom thanked me often. "I don't know what we'd do without you." Michael visited 3 times in 18 months. Each visit lasted less than an hour. He always had an excuse. The children were busy. Work couldn't wait. Flights were expensive. Dad never complained. He simply smiled whenever Michael arrived and hugged him as though months hadn't passed. That's who my father was. Kind until the very end. One rainy November afternoon, he squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you." I smiled through tears. "You've already told me that. I wanted you to hear it one more time." Those were the last words he ever spoke to me. The funeral brought relatives from every corner of the country. People filled the church with stories about Dad's generosity. Michael stood beside Mom accepting condolences as though he had never been absent. I said nothing. Grief has a way of making small arguments feel meaningless. 2 weeks later, our family gathered at the attorney's office. Dad's will was surprisingly simple. Most of his savings, investments, and property would pass to Mom. After her lifetime, everything remaining would be divided equally between Michael and me. Dad had always believed fairness mattered. The attorney finished reading. Everyone nodded. I felt relieved. Then Mom cleared her throat. "I've made a decision." The attorney looked confused. "What kind of decision?" She folded her hands together. "Grace won't be receiving half." I stared at her. "What?" Mom looked almost uncomfortable. "I've already transferred the investment accounts to Michael." The room became completely silent. The attorney frowned. "Mrs. Carter," she interrupted him. "It's my legal right." I turned toward my brother. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "You knew." His silence answered before he did. Finally, he whispered, "Mom thought it was best." I looked back at her. "Why?" She took a slow breath. "Michael has 3 children." I waited. "He needs it more." Those 4 words echoed louder than anything else she'd ever said to me. I almost laughed. Needed it more? I had spent 18 months caring for our father. I had paused my career, delayed my own dreams, watched the strongest man I knew slowly fade away. And somehow the measure of love had become who needed money more. The attorney quietly spoke. "Grace has every right to challenge these transfers." Mom nodded. She could. Then she looked directly at me. "But I hope she won't." Everyone waited for my answer. Michael finally raised his head. For just a second, guilt flickered across his face. I slowly stood. The chair scraped softly against the wooden floor. I picked up my purse. "I won't challenge anything." Mom exhaled with visible relief. "But understand this." I looked at both of them. Today wasn't the day I lost an inheritance. I paused. It was the day I lost my family. Without another word, I walked out of the attorney's office, never imagining how much louder silence could become than any argument. I didn't block my mother's number. I didn't change my address. I simply stopped reaching out. No birthday calls. No holiday visits. No Sunday dinners. The silence wasn't punishment. It was protection. For months, my phone occasionally rang. Sometimes it was Mom. Sometimes Michael. Sometimes relatives insisting I was overreacting. I answered none of them. Instead, I focused on rebuilding the life I had paused while caring for Dad. Using the woodworking skills he had taught me, I started creating handcrafted furniture in a rented workshop. At first, I built custom dining tables, then bookshelves, then entire home office collections. Customers appreciated the attention to detail. Word spread quickly. Within a year, I hired my first employee. 6 months later, I rented a larger building. Every piece that left my workshop carried a small engraving underneath. Built with integrity. Dad had always said integrity was the one thing nobody could take from you. Meanwhile, I occasionally heard news about Michael through distant relatives. He invested much of the inheritance in risky business ventures. He purchased an expensive truck, then a vacation home, then another investment that promised impossible returns. Within 2 years, most of the money was gone. I felt no satisfaction hearing it, only sadness. Dad hadn't spent decades building security, so it could disappear chasing shortcuts. One rainy afternoon, nearly 3 years after the attorney's office meeting, someone knocked on my workshop door. I looked up from a workbench. It was Mom. She seemed smaller somehow, older. The confidence she'd carried that day had faded into uncertainty. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, she smiled weakly. "Hello, Grace." "Hello, Mom." She looked around the workshop. "It's beautiful." "Thank you. I've driven past twice before." I waited. "I wasn't sure if you'd want to see me." I carefully set my tools aside. "What brings you here?" Her eyes filled with tears. "The house feels empty." I remained silent. Michael moved to another state. She looked toward the floor. "I hardly see the grandchildren." Again, I said nothing. She took a deep breath. "I made the biggest mistake of my life." The words hung quietly between us. I kept telling myself I was helping the child who needed more. She wiped her eyes. But I forgot about the child who had already given everything. For the first time since Dad died, I saw genuine regret. Not because the money was gone, because she finally understood what her decision had truly cost. "I don't expect forgiveness," she whispered. "I just wanted you to know I finally understand." I slowly walked toward a shelf in the corner. Resting there was the old wooden toolbox Dad and I had shared. I gently opened it. Inside lay a faded photograph of the 3 of us working together years earlier. Dad stood in the middle. Mom smiled proudly beside him. I handed her the picture. She immediately began crying. He loved this day. He loved all of us. She nodded through tears. I failed him. No. She looked at me. You failed both of us. She closed her eyes. I know. The workshop became quiet except for rain tapping softly against the windows. Finally, Mom asked the question she'd probably rehearsed 100 times. Can we start over? I thought carefully before answering. I don't know. She nodded. I understand. But healing isn't something you ask for. She listened closely. It's something you earn. For the first time in years, a small smile appeared on her face. I'll try. I hope you do. She hugged the photograph against her chest before walking toward the door. Just before leaving, she turned around. Your father would have been proud of what you've built. I smiled softly. I know. After she left, I returned to my workbench. Sunlight slowly broke through the clouds outside. I realized something Dad had tried to teach me all those years. An inheritance isn't always measured by money. Sometimes it's measured by character, by resilience, by knowing your worth even after someone else refuses to recognize it. Mom believed giving Michael the inheritance would save him. Instead, it cost her the daughter who had quietly stood beside her through the hardest season of life. I never fought for the money because Dad had already given me something far more valuable. The strength to walk away without becoming bitter. And in the end, that became the greatest inheritance of all.